Erev Tov, everybody. Welcome to another edition of our Monday night Mishle Proverbs class. Tonight we are studying the 6th chapter. We are in the middle of a great discussion, continuing on things that we spoke about last time. Last part of the first part of chapter 6, we spoke about the importance of avoiding commitments that are beyond your abilities. Thereby being diligent in their deeds and actions. And we learned a lot of lessons from the ant. The idea to be industrious, not to be lazy, to perform good deeds, be wise from the ant. Today we're going to see some other pieces of advice that Shlomo HaMelech is informing us. And we're going to end the class with one of the more famous Pesukim that we have in all of Tanakh, actually. And we'll touch upon the notion of Torah study, of course, and how it affects us not just now, but even in the next world, in the reward that comes in the world to come. So we begin on Pasuk Yud Bet. If you're following inside, wherever you're listening to it, either live or on a recording, wherever you are in the world, Perek Vav, Pasuk Yud Bet. The first few psukim that we're going to speak tonight deals with dishonest people, and how these individuals will be undone. The dangers of certain undesirable character traits that can lead to some very, very grave transgressions. And Shlomo HaMelech begins Pasuk Yud Bet by saying, Adam beliya'al ish avin, holech ikshut peh. The lawless person is a man of sin. He goes forth with distortion of the mouth. Whenever you see the word Belial, here translated as lawless, it is a word that connotes the worst of the worst evils. Whenever you see Belial in the Torah, you can picture in your head, mamash, the lowly and the most concentrated Rasha you can imagine. Belial is a combination of the words Beliol. Beliol means without a yoke. He casts off God and the yoke of God from him. This individual is so sinful. He perverts with his mouth with a slanderous intent, says the Metzudot. A person who casts off the sovereignty of both God and man, he does whatever evil he sees fit to do. And there are three parts to this pasuk. You have Adam Belial, you have a lawless man referring to man's evil deeds, and he perpetrates evil. He fears nobody. Then you have Ish Avin. Ish Avin is an individual of a man of sin. A man's referring to a person's thoughts. And although he may speak nicely and he's very eloquent in the way he talks, nevertheless he harbors feelings of sin in his heart. And the last is you have Ikshut Peh. Ikshut Peh is distortions of the mouth, and that refers to a man's evil speech. So that was the words of the Vilna Gaon. 3 levels of sinning here mentioned in this pasuk. And here he goes on to describe him in more metaphorical ways. Koretz be'einav, molel beraglav, more be'etzbeotav. This man, this Belial, winks with his eyes, he scrapes with his feet, he points with his fingers. All of these terms describe a form of signaling, of hinting. They all describe the wicked people, and they all hint to Lashon Hara and slander. Tapuchot belibo, perversities in his heart. His heart's thoughts are to transgress things from what they really are. He says yes, but in his heart he thinks the opposite. He says no. Choresh ra bechol et. He plots evil all the time. When a person plows the ground, choresh, when he plows and he prepares the soil for seeding, this man, same, his evil thoughts are the prelude, is the planting, is the plowing to the evil deeds that are going to sprout from the ground. Midyanim yeshaleach. He incites strife. He constantly plots evil and incites fights among people. These pesukim demonstrate that once a person rejects God's sovereignty, the Adam Belial, there's no doubt in our mind that he will surely perform all the evil activities that follow. The Malbim says that these Pesukim that we just read, there are 7 characteristics by which the Adam Belial, the lawless person, who flaunts the commandments between him and his creator, and he's also an Ish Avin. He disregards the commandments between man and his fellow man. And he lists them out over here. Number 1, through his speech against the dictates of what Chokhmah is, wisdom. He sins with his eyes. That's the verb, the pasuk that talked about winking. He disregards the Torah laws. With his movements, he in his readiness to do evil with his action. With his hands, the pasuk says he points with his fingers, so he sins with his hands. The pasuk also said perversities in his heart, so therefore he sins with his thoughts, and he begins to think and harbors heretical ideas. He plots evil at all times, and also in his thoughts against fellow man. And finally, he incites strife amongst others. Al ken, therefore, Shlomo HaMelech says, Pitom yavo edo peta yishaver ve'en marpe. Therefore, his misfortune will come suddenly. He will be broken in an instant without healing. The word peta and pitom are both terms which imply immediacy. Pitom denotes immediacy of time, and peta means the swiftness of action, says the Malbim. He's not going to be aware of his downfall because he's going to get wiped out so fast. There is no remedy for it because it comes so fast. Since he constantly harbored evil thoughts in his mind and against others, then his punishment will come suddenly and allow him no time to plan an alternative course of action to save himself. He will have no remedy. He cannot repent. God hates people who incite strife. And in the next few Pesukim, he explains the root the root cause behind the action. Why is it? Shesh hena saneh Hashem v'sheva to'avat nafso. Hashem hates these 6 characteristics, but the 7th is the abomination of his soul. The 7th is included in the 7 things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu hates. It's an abomination to Hashem. It's hated even more than the others. There's actually a machloket between the Mefarshim on which of the following 7 is considered the abomination. We know he hates all of 7, but one of the 7 is the abomination, the worst of the worst. According to the Meiri, the 7th most abhorrent trait is the one that's mentioned first, the one which the pasuk is going to mention first very shortly, which is a trait of arrogance, or einaim ramot, haughty eyes, arrogant eyes. It's the cause of the 6 hated things that come after that. That is the opinion of the Meiri. The Malbim says no. It's the 7th and worst thing that God hates. The abomination is the last one of the 7 that we're about to mention, which is inciting strife among people. So the 7 things are now enumerated in the next few Pesukim. Says Pasuk Yud Zayin, Einaim ramot leshon shaker v'yadayim shofchot dam naki. Haughty eyes, a false tongue, and hands shedding innocent blood. Enaim Ramot refers to the trait of arrogance, of ga'ava. For one who is arrogant, he lifts his eyes towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as opposed to the humble who look down towards the ground. The Ramban, in his famous letter, the Igeret Ramban, which he recommends that every Jew read every day, and I recommend that every Jew read every day. It's an unbelievable letter, not long. He advises the individual on how to accustom himself to practice humility, how to act humbly. And there he writes, and I quote, "Let your words be spoken gently. Let your head be bowed. Cast your eyes downward and your heart heavenward." These are the words of the Ramban, Nachmanides, in his Igeret to his son. The most important thing a person needs to do is be humble. This individual, Einaim Ramot, is the opposite. He lifts his eyes upwards. That's number 1. Again, we said to the Meiri, that's the most abhorrent, that's the worst character trait that a person can have. Leshon sheker, a false tongue. In other words, simply false speech. Ve'adayim shofchot dam naki, a hand shedding innocent blood. The Ibn Ezra says in reference to a murderer. The Vilna Gaon says in describing the full gamut of the evil person's wickedness, you have his thought, you have his speech, and the fact that he's a deceiver. Those three things can bring a person to very, very high levels of wickedness. The next two things are mentioned in Pasuk Yudchet, 2 of the 7. Lev choresh machshevot aven, raglaim memaharot larutz lera'am. A heart plotting iniquitous thoughts, feet hastening to run to evil. Again, you have a heart here devising ways to harm people. That's all he thinks about during the day is how am I going to get back at this guy? How am I going to bring this person down? What can I say to cause this guy's downfall? What can I do? What can I send? What can I post to cause this guy's downfall? This is what he's thinking about. And the next thing is the feet that are rushing to perform evil acts. Before a person has any time to think about regret, he's already doing it. Some people, they don't begin to think before they act, and they're just, before they know it, they are engulfed in averot. Yafiach kezavim edeshakir, a false witness blowing deceptions. People who testify falsely in court. Umshalech medanim ben achim. And last but not least, according to Malbim, this is the worst of the worst, one who stirs up strife among brothers. This last trait is that of causing strife among people who we should be loving, or a person should be loving of him. The Malbim explains that the incitement of strife among people is worse than the other 6 sins. You know why? Because it mamash brings the destruction of society. When there is unity, when there is shalom in Klal Yisrael, then God's Spirit rests, His Shekhinah rests on the Jewish people. But if there's strife, if there's fights and arguments, Hashem despises them, says the Vilna Gaon. Peace is such a potent force that it can even outweigh some of the most severe sins. Rashi in Parashat Bereshit asks a question, Parashat Noach, asks a question. Which sin is more severe? That of the generation of the flood, or that of the generation of Dor HaPelaga, the generation of the dispersion, where God dispersed the nations? And he answers, the generation of the flood did not rebel against God. It was not a rebellion against God. And the latter, the generation of the dispersion, rebelled against God. They built a tower to fight God. Yet it was the generation of the flood that was completely destroyed, not the generation of the dispersion, not the generation of the Pelaga. Why is that the case, says Rashi? The generation of the flood, he says, was noted for robbery. They were noted for causing disputes and discord, and that's why they were completely destroyed. The generation of the Pelaga, the dispersion, they lived in peace and harmony. Yes, they fought God, but they lived in peace and harmony. And from here we see that they were spared a more severe punishment despite the evil of their plans. This teaches us how hateful is dispute and how great shalom, peace, is in God's eyes. Peace is such a great virtue, Rabotai, that even if Jews worship idols but live in peace and harmony, God says, I have no power to punish them, since there's peace among them. That's what the Midrash writes in Sefer Bereshit. An unbelievable statement. And that's why the Malbim says, a person who stirs up strife among brothers, this is the worst of the worst. Sometimes a person causes strife by spreading gossip and slander. And this is another reason why the 7th sin is more severe than the other 6, because a person who slanders, a person who says Lashon Hara, kills 3 people. He kills himself, he kills the listener, and the person about whom is spoken. This is not me, this is the Gemara, Masechet Arachin, Daf Tetvav, Amud Bet. The Midrash expounds Lashon Hara is a more serious transgression than the 3 cardinal sins of murder, idolatry, and adultery. Because a murderer kills only 1 person. Lashon Hara kills 3, the speaker, the listener, and the one whom's about. And we learn this from the story of Doeg Adomi in Sefer Shemuel. Doeg Adomi told Shaul HaMelech and that the Kohen Gadol, Achimelech, was a supporter of David. at the time David HaMelech was running away from Shaul because Shaul wanted to kill him. Doeg found out that Achimelech took refuge, that David took refuge in the city of Nov, where Achimelech was the king and the main Kohen, the Kohen Gadol, and reported this to Shaul, and Shaul had the entire city wiped out. And because of that Lashon Hara, all three were killed. Shaul, who believed Doeg Adomi, was killed in battle with the Plishtim at the end of Sefer Shmuel. Achimelech, who was the subject of the Lashon Hara, he was executed by command of Shaul HaMelech. And of course, Doeg Adomi, the actual slanderer, died at a young age and lost his share in Olam Haba, as mentioned in Masechet Sanhedrin. The Chafetz Chaim enumerates the consequences that result from slander and incitement to cause fights. And he warns that these sins empower the Satan to prosecute the Jewish people in Shamayim. On the other hand, if there is shalom, if there is harmony, and there are no talebearers among them, then the Satan is neutralized. The Satan has absolutely no power and cannot condemn them even for such a sin as idol worship. What is the proof to this? I quote you another series of events in Tanakh, this time in Sefer Melachim. The generation of Achav, one of the worst Jewish kings to ever live, worshipped idols. And yet, for some reason, Achav's army was always victorious. He served as king for so long. How is it possible? How is it possible that he was so successful when his whole generation served idols because of him? Because of him. And the answer, the Midrash says, because there were no talebearers among them. Nobody spoke Lashon Hara among them. No one informed King Achav that Obadiah the prophet was hiding 100 prophets to save their life. And he saved them from certain death because Achav wanted to kill the prophets. Achav and Izebel HaMalkah, Queen Jezebel, they wanted to kill all the prophets. And Obadiah hid them. And no one said anything. No one said anything. And as a result that no one spoke Lashon Hara, he kept his kingdom for so many years, even though they were worshipping idols. It was unbelievable. On the other hand, the great and righteous David HaMelech suffered defeats. Even David didn't have a perfect record. Even David suffered defeat because there was strife and there was Lashon Hara in his time. Hashem responds to a person's deeds midah keneged midah. If he controls himself and refrains from Lashon Hara, then, like we said, the Malach in Shamayim, the Satan, cannot accuse Klal Yisrael, cannot prosecute Klal Yisrael. But one who slanders another person, thereby enabling the Satan to bring the sins of the Jewish people before God, that is abhorrent to God. Because now he has no choice. He has no choice to listen to the Satan, the demands of the Satan, and punish the Jewish people. Netzor beni mitzvat avicha ve'al titosh torat imecha. Seek ways to keep the commandments. Listen, my child, the command of your father, and do not forsake the teaching of your mother. Commandments, mitzvot, can only be fulfilled at their designated time or when the opportunity presents itself. If someone is not well and I have an opportunity to visit the sick, so I get up and I go visit the sick. Some mitzvot are time-bound, like shaking the lulav. I shake the lulav on Sukkot. I don't shake the lulav in the month of Cheshvan. Therefore, in reference to mitzvot, the verb that's used is netzor. Netzor is to guard, to preserve them until the opportunity to perform them arises. Torah, on the other hand, needs to be studied always, like we're doing right now. We're listening to a shiur. And it has to be studied all the time. And therefore, the warning of al titosh means do not forsake Torah even for 1 minute. The word mitzvah connotes a command, which implies that the dictates of a superior. Someone is commanding you from a higher source, such as a father that is commanding his child, or a master to a servant. And that's why it says, Netzor beni mitzvat avicha, the mitzvah of your father. Torah, on the other hand, means instruction, to teach. Teaching in the areas of faith, of ideology, ethics. Mitzvah is associated with the father, who is the authoritative figure who chastises and forces a person or his child to hear the instructions, because you have to hear the commandments of the Torah, even if they go against your natural instinct. And we have many, many mitzvot that people don't feel connected to, but we still have to do them. That's why it's called a mitzvah. It's still commanded. And if he does so, he will automatically not abandon the ideology of Torah, ve'al titosh torat imecha, because the soul is innately attracted to it, just like the child is very much attracted to the mother. Only when a person rejects a commandment, chas v'shalom, that defense mechanism will lead him to justify himself by denying the fundamentals of faith, says the Malbim. The Al-Shich says, the command of your father is in reference to the Torah shebichtav, the written law. And the Torat imecha, the teaching of your mother, is Torah shebe'al peh, the oral law. The oral law is the Mishnah, the Midrashim, the Gemara, and everything that came after the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. We were given both on Har Sinai. We were given the written law, and we were given the oral law. To the written law, not even one letter was added. Once Moshe Rabbeinu got Chamisha Chumshei Torah, that was it. Until Adayom Hazeh, Tafshin Pei Aleph, not one letter was added to it. This is comparable to the father's role in the child's conception. After the child is conceived, the father's role is over. There's nothing left for him to do. It's done. Can't add anything else. The oral law, the Torah Shebe'al Peh, is compared to the mother's role, because each succeeding generation draws upon the unbroken chain of Torah knowledge from the previous generations, just like a child nurses from the mother. The job of the mother continues and continues and continues. According to the Ralbag, the command of your father refers to the Torah which Hashem, your father, commanded you to listen. But the teaching of your mother, the Torat Imecha, refers to the stories that are found in the Torah, which elevate a person and convey the legacy of our Avot that we're studying now in the Chumash. The forefathers are like the mother vis-a-vis God the Father. These teachings and these commandments that we must listen to, Kosrem al libecha tamid, ondem al gargerotecha. Tie them on your heart always, entwine them upon your neck. The heart signifies thought. We've spoken this before. And the neck signifies speech. And to bind them implies that the commandments are something that could often be foreign to the human instinct. And therefore we have to tie them to our heart with ropes, so to speak, to subjugate our heart to follow his commandments, to assure ourselves that these mitzvot are never going to be forgotten. And therefore we entwine them around your neck and your throat. But meaning what? We speak about them constantly, so that help you remember, help our children remember. The more we speak to our children about mitzvot, the more we tell them about Netilat Yadayim and Birkat HaMazon at the brachot before you eat, the more it becomes a part of them. But sometimes they don't understand. It's not common to them. They don't grow up. They're not born reciting brachot. It needs to be heard. It needs to be, the neck needs to move. The voice that comes from the neck through the mouth, it needs to be heard. What to do, how to do it, when to do it, why we do it. And that's how the child learns. That's how a student learns. And sometimes it's difficult, but nevertheless, we just say it over and over and over again. And you'll see your child grab. By constantly recounting and delving into the stories of our Chachamim, a person will begin to comprehend the meaning of the mitzvot, the wisdom that they contain, and all the amazing things that come embedded in these stories. We can learn the Torah. We spoke about learning the Torah on a simple level, on the level of Pshat, and then you have all the way to the level of Sod. You know, you read a story of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You know, this week's Perashah of Yaakov lying down on Har HaMoriah, and he's put these rocks underneath his head, and he fell asleep, and there's a ladder, and angels going up and down. Okay, so if I'm studying in grade 1, If I'm studying in elementary school, then I understand, cool, I got angels going up and down the ladder. But as you get older, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and you delve deep in the Torah, what do those angels represent? Why are they going up? Why are they going down? Why are they first going up then down? Who are these angels? There's so much behind the scenes. And this is something that we have to attain only through the study of the Torah. Beit lachecha tanche otach, beshochpecha tishmor alecha, va'kitzota hi tesichecha. A very famous pasuk. As you go forth, it will guide you. As you recline, it will protect you. And when you awake, it will converse with you. The Torah will lead you on the straight road. It will protect you from all types of harm and robbers who want to attack you at night. And when you wake up, it will speak with you like a good friend who entertains you. That's why when we go to sleep with Torah Tzivalanu Moshe Morasha Keilat Yaakov. And we wake up, and one of the first things we say is Birkot HaTorah. The Torah is with us when we sleep and when we wake up. According to Rashi, as you go forth, the words as you go forth in this pasuk is during your lifetime. And as you recline is when a person passes away at Me'ah V'Esrim. When you awake is in reference to Techiyat HaMetim, the resurrection of the dead, to answer for their actions in life, which is Hi Tesichecha. It will speak on your behalf to defend you. Of course, let's recall the famous Mishnah in Masechet Avot of Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma, who was approached by a man who offered him all the riches in the world to come and live with him in his city. He was offered a fortune as an inducement to move to where he lived. And he replied, even if you give me all the wealth, the gold, the silver, and precious jewels in the world, I would only reside in a place of Torah. When a person departs from this world, neither silver, gold, precious stones escort him. Only his Torah and good deeds remain with him, as taught in Pirkei Avot. A similar idea, the Midrash explains that a person has three friends: his family, his money, and his good deeds. When he departs from this world at Me'ah V'Esrim, a person gathers his family and asks them, please save me from this decree of death. But they can't do anything. They're powerless in front of the Malach HaMavet. The same is true of his wealth. His good deeds, however, they respond, before you come, we will precede you. V'halach lefanecha tzidkecha. Your righteous deeds will precede you, as the pasuk says in Yeshayahu. The good deeds are in front of you on your way to Gan Eden. They're already acting on your behalf. They're speaking to the malachim, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, you gotta let this guy in. The wealth stayed behind. The family also stayed behind. But the good deeds, the ma'asim tovim, the mitzvot that you do, they're already signing you up so that you can enter the VIP section. This is what they're acting for. Beshochpecha, when you lie down in the grave at Me'ah V'Esrim, when someone passes away, the merit of the Torah will protect his body, to so much so that the worms and the maggots will have no effect on it. Such was the case, the Gemara says, of Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon and Achai bar Yoshia and other great righteous people. I remember hearing a story, an unbelievable story, a very scary story about an individual who passed away in Eretz Israel. The person that told me this story heard it from someone that was there. Yes, it is like third person, but it's okay. I'll say it anyways. Person who passed away in Eretz Israel, and as they were burying him, when they were lowering him into the kever, a whole bunch of rats came and filled the kever. And they said, oh my gosh, we can't bury this person here because, it's disgrace to the body. The rats were going to come and, just consume the body right away. Let's go find another spot. So they dug up another spot and they started lowering the body. And again, right before they were lowering the body, again, the rats came and filled in the grave. And they go, this is unbelievable, but we're going to have to try it again. We can't. It's not kavod for the body to do so. Can't do this. So they dug up a third spot. And as they were lowering the body into the third grave, again, rats filled up the grave. The Chevra Kadisha never saw this in their life, and they figured it was a sign from Shamayim. And unfortunately, they had no choice but to lower the body in that spot, and the rats came over the body, and then they covered it with dirt. Only a short while later, it was discovered that this person lent money on interest. And the Torah tells us that the word for interest is neshech. Neshech means to bite. And this individual, although behind the scenes was charging his fellow Jew interest for loans, something that is blatantly against the Torah to do. And so if even the averot, unfortunately, follow you until death. So the person, when he passed away, he couldn't even pass away in peace, as his body was taken over by rats. It was a horrible, horrible story to listen to. But again, just reiterates this idea that we're mentioned. A person who has the mitzvot follow him. But a person, God forbid, has the averot are also going to follow you. And even after we pass away. Va'kitzota, when you awake, when it comes time for Techiyat HaMetim, the Torah and the wonderful deeds that we said preceded you, they're going to speak for you. Hi tesichecha. They will speak for you. A person will be resurrected in the merit of his Torah study. The Gemara tells us in Masechet Ketuvot that a person who made use of the light of Torah in his lifetime will be resurrected by that light. Chafetz Chaim explains that a person's soul will delight in Gan Eden in the merit of the good deeds in life, but it was only the merit of Torah study can his body, which has already turned to dust, be resurrected. And he emphasizes the point with a mashal, with a metaphor, that even though the chances of fire in someone's home is very slim, a person knows that he's got to have fire insurance. He has to have house insurance so that he can rebuild the house in case it happens. So likewise, when it comes to life, he has to assure himself of the means to rebuild his body, which is absolutely certain to be destroyed by death. All of our bodies disintegrate. This is only possible if he has a guaranteed share in Torah study while he was alive. If a person engaged in Torah study while he was alive, that merit alone is what is going to help bring the resurrection and his body to be recreated in time for Techiyat HaMetim. And the last pasuk that we're going to learn tonight, like I said, probably one of the most famous pasukim in all of Tanakh. Kiner mitzvah v'Torah or. V'derech hayim tochechot musar. We recite this pasuk during Chanukah many times, being that it speaks about a lamp and light. For a commandment is a lamp and the Torah is light. The merit of a mitzvah is just temporary, like the flame of a lamp. But the merit of the Torah is or. The Torah is everlasting, like the light of the sun. The great merit of Torah study, we see many, many times in the teachings of our Chachamim. The Mishnah enumerates all the mitzvot whose fruit a person enjoys in this world, but the sachar, the principle, the principle is reserved in the world to come. Kibud avaim, we say it every morning in Shachrit. But then the Mishnah concludes, Talmud Torah keneged kulam. Talmud Torah keneged kulam, the study of the Torah is equivalent to them all. And according to one explanation, the entire universe is not equivalent to one word of Torah. Meaning, one word outdoes the whole universe. All the commandments are not equivalent to one word of the Torah. Avera mekaba mitzvah, ve'en avera mekaba Torah. The Gemara Masechet Sotah Daf Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph says that a sin is able to extinguish a mitzvah. A person sins and it just blocks off, it X's out a mitzvah that you did the other day. But a sin cannot extinguish Torah study. Rashi explains that the sin extinguishes the reward for the mitzvah, but not the reward of a person who occupied himself studying the Torah. The Malbim says sunlight comes from above, and that's why the light of Torah emanates from above, and is part of a person's spiritual being, his divine soul. The light is eternal. It continues to shine for the tzaddikim even after their soul departs at Me'ah V'Esrim. The light of the lamp is dependent on the physical properties, the property of oil and a wick in order to give the light. And therefore the mitzvah is also connected to the physical part of one's being. And it's also limited, as it were, by the existence of the body. I can only perform mitzvot when I'm here in this world and I'm alive and have a body to perform the mitzvot. Only of those that, like we mentioned in previous shurim, only those that prepared on Erev Shabbat can enjoy the Shabbat. Only here on this world do I have the opportunity to perform mitzvah. Once in Olam Haba, that opportunity is gone because my body is no longer there, it's no longer physical. The lamp is something that is connected very much to the physical, and that's why the mitzvot as well. The Talmud illustrates this pasuk with a mashal of a man who's walking in the dark of night and he fears thorns and thistles, wild animals, robbers along the way. He didn't even know where he was going. And he found a torch. And that torch enabled him to avoid the thorns, the pits, but he still feared the wild animals. And he still feared the robbers. And he still didn't know his way. And the moment dawn came and the sun started to rise, he was saved from the wild animals and the robbers. The only problem is, he still didn't know where he was going. He didn't know his direction. And only when he reached the crossroads, that's what the Gemara says, when he reached the crossroads, was he relieved of that fear. So Rashi explains the parable. Someone who performs a mitzvah is only partially saved from punishments. Once he has the merit of Torah study, he is saved from the sin and from affliction. But there's still danger. There's a danger in the Yetzer Hara will overcome him and stop him from studying Torah. And only when he gets to the crossroads is he safe and secure from the Yetzer Hara, from the evil inclination. The Chachamim explain the crossroads in various ways. Either it refers to the day of death, Yom Mitah, because only then can a Talmid Chacham, a scholar, be sure that his Yetzer Hara has neither led him astray nor influenced him to abandon Torah. Or it refers to a scholar who has attained Yirat Shamayim, fear of God, fear of sin, Yirat Chet. Because now his Torah knowledge teaches him what is required and what is prohibited. And that fear of sin restrains him from chasing after the Yetzer Hara. Some even want to say that this pasuk elaborates on the previous pasuk that we mentioned, pasuk Kaf, the importance of listening to one's father's command and the mother's instruction. The command of the father is like a lamp. If one obeys his father's command, it's as if he took the lamp to illuminate the darkness. Anything he may have lost now will be found with that help. The same is true of a person who heeds his mother's instruction. It's a source of light for him. The rabbis tell us in Masechet Shabbat, Kaf Gimel, we're in the month of Kislev, the month of Chanukah, and the rabbis tell us that there's a direct correlation between lighting the Chanukah candles and meriting the light of Torah. The Gemara says, Haragil bener hevyin le banim tamidei chachamim. A person who is accustomed to lighting, whether Shabbat candles or Chanukah candles, will have children who are Torah scholars. And Rashi explains, quoting our pasuk here, that through the lamp of such mitzvot, like Shabbat and Chanukah, a person is able to acquire the light of Torah. Since prayers are more readily accepted when they are offered during the performance of the mitzvah, that's why a woman prays for her children who will enlighten the world in Torah when she lights her Shabbat candles and Chanukah candles. Specifically, Shabbat candles, when the tefillah that the lady says when she lights the Shabbat candles became a very famous song now. V'zakeni legadel banim uvnei banim, shomer Torah mitzvot. This is what the lady prays for. The Chidushei Harim once instructed his students, his Hasidim students, to study the Torah immediately after lighting the Chanukah candles. Kiner mitzvah beTorah or. He explained with certainty that fulfilling a mitzvah just shows how important the light of Torah is, and how much more so when the mitzvah itself is out what lights up the world. And the pasuk ends, V'derech chayim tochechot musar. And reproving discipline is the way of life. Since Musar, which we've spoken so much about the past in this series, since Musar rebukes a person to a proper, productive way of life, this is the way of life. This is the derech chayim. The derech chayim is a tochechot musar. And even if someone has a lamp to illuminate his way, he still must be sure that he's going on the proper path, or else, God forbid, the Malbim says that light will be of no benefit. The force that leads him on the right path is the tochechot musar, is the discipline, the reproof, the tochacha. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai explains that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave 3 precious gifts to Klal Yisrael, and all were given only through affliction, through tzarot. The Torah, Eretz Yisrael, and Olam Haba. We learn that Olam Haba is bestowed through affliction from the words V'derech Chaim Tochechot Musar. That's what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says. The way of life, Derech Chaim, the way of life of the world to come, is attained through affliction, through Tochechot Musar. Quotes of Vilna Gaon. The righteous, the tzaddikim in this world, will attain their reward in Olam Haba through the afflictions that they suffer in this world, which serve for what purpose? To cleanse them of their sins. And we can imagine a little mashal. Imagine a person was invited to attend a wedding, but until he removed all of the stains and all of the blemishes from his clothing, he could not enter to join the festivities. This is the purpose why we're here. We're here not for the first time. We've come back. This is the 2nd, 3rd, 4th. Who knows how many times we're back here. We have to remove the stains. We have to do a good laundering job of our clothing, the clothing of our neshama, our bodies, our souls. So much needs to be rectified. And Bezrat Hashem, through the tochechot musar, through the reproof and the rebuke and the discourse and all the things that we go through in life, those things help us attain the derech chaim. Those things help us attain following the proper path, of course, led by the shining light of ner mitzvah v'torah or, the light of the mitzvah and the lamp of the mitzvah and the light of Torah, which is everlasting. We will continue this next week, Bezrat Hashem. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Have a wonderful evening. The Finding Holiness podcast has been brought to you by Eli's Fine Foods. Check out their menu and other items and services on their website at elisfinefoods.com.